Good afternoon. I'm Earl Butch Graves Jr., CEO of Black Enterprise, and it's my great privilege to welcome all of you to BE's 2022 Women of Power Tech. As many of you know, BE launched this virtual conference back in 2020, when the world was facing a devastating pandemic. We determined the moment was right to leap boldly forward. We aim to create an innovative forum dedicated to the professional advancement of women of color in the tech space. We brought together high caliber Black women executives, creatives, influencers, and tech industry leaders for 2 days worth of learning and skills building for a rapidly changing world. Now in its third year, BE's Women of Power Tech has emerged as the nation's most important virtual summit for women tech professionals of color. Our mission remains the same, but there's no doubt that the landscape for Black women in tech has become even more challenging. Let's break down the situation for a moment. News reports tell us that the tech industry is building back strong after the worst of the pandemic. Profits and jobs are growing. Indeed, the addition of tech-related jobs to the economy is driving job growth nationally. Tech isn't merely in recovery, it's booming. It's a great success story, except that women of color have largely been left out of the narrative. In the best of times, diversity in the tech sector has been scandalously low. Black and Latinx women comprise less than 5% of the tech workforce. The pandemic made matters worse, driving a disproportionate number of Black women out of the workforce. Yet, even though job opportunities are returning overall, unemployment figures for Black women continue to rise. Now, consider the immense scope of talent and skill level represented at this event, the caliber of the many women taking part from across the tech fields. It's clear that Black women deserve not only better representation in tech, your place is at the forefront of the industry's recovery. To paraphrase the outstanding Congresswoman Maxine Waters, today is about reclaiming your time and your rightful space in the tech space. Whether you're a seasoned tech professional, a rising entrepreneur, or new to the tech job market, you'll find information and solutions that address your needs and help move you forward. The diversity of experience represented here is exactly the point. Those tech gatekeepers I mentioned earlier have done a great job creating the false impression that tech is a rarefied space where people of color can't excel and don't belong. In truth, the tech space is for everyone. Anyone can master the skills to communicate, innovate, and compete at the highest level. On that note, I want to thank our generous and forward-thinking corporate sponsors for their investment in the mission of Black Enterprise to open doors to the STEM fields. Thank you, Fidelity Investments, JP Morgan Chase, United Health Group, American Airlines, Merck, and Walmart. Finally, I want to thank all of you for your spirited engagement and commitment to Black Enterprise. We promise a memorable and valuable experience. Welcome to Women of Power Tech 2022. We're starting off with a bang, with a conversation that counts on the power of innovation. I have the distinct pleasure of sitting down with one of the country's most requested speakers on innovation to discuss how unleashing the full potential of Black women and other underrepresented founders can power growth, create value, close the opportunity gap, and build generational wealth. She's the CEO of Black Ambition, the nonprofit founded by Pharrell Williams to invest capital and resources in bold ideas that will change the world. And she has long worked to diversify tech ecosystems as the former executive director and co-founder of Black Tech Week, Code Fever, and the Center for Black Innovation. She's an author, a consultant, and a social entrepreneur who has been honored by everyone from Black Enterprise to the White House. Please welcome tech powerhouse, Ms. Felecia Hatcher.
Thank you, Butch, so much for the invitation.
Absolutely. You know, I gave in the intro some humbling statistics surrounding African-American women in the tech space. And I wonder what you have seen, and you certainly have a deep experience in it, but what you have seen in that has changed over that. But before I even get to that, I would be remiss because I really want to put into context to give people a little bit more about your background. So if you could take a moment and share with us your background and what got you involved in tech in the first place, and where you are and how you got to this position now of being the CEO of Black Ambition.
Sure. And so I was a C student in high school that taught myself how to code, had a guidance counselor tell me I'd never make it to a college or university because of my grades, and was one of the first kids like in my group to get a computer, right? And so I used that to win $130,000 in scholarships as a C student by getting creative and teaching myself how to code. And that opened up everything for me for possibilities. I then worked in like product launch and experiential marketing for some of the largest tech companies and gaming companies, Nintendo, Sony, helped launch Wells Fargo's Second Life video game. And like those were some of the early stages for me in my career in that space. And then I'm a serial entrepreneur. And so when the economy tanked in 2008, I lost my job. My husband lost his job. And I moved back to Florida and started a food company, literally on a fluke, right? Literally just waiting for another job to happen. And I think the lessons that I learned in that economic downturn have fueled everything for me in this current economic environment of supporting entrepreneurs at a high level. You know, we started Code Fever while we were running our food company as a way to train our employees, African-American and Caribbean youth here in Miami. We knew we weren't going to run a popsicle manufacturing company forever. We knew that they weren't going to work for us forever, and we wanted to train them in the most marketable skills possible. And so we started Code Fever literally at a time in Miami when Miami startup ecosystem was just sprouting up, and it was not inclusive of the Black community at all. And we wanted to do something about it. And so Code Fever, then Black Tech Week, which was recently acquired by Lightship Foundation out of Cincinnati. And then launching the Center for Black Innovation as a beautiful 10,000 square foot space in the Overtown area of Miami to literally create magnetic forces for talent, resources, training, and money for Black communities. And while that's based in Miami, I've always looked at all Black communities as being centers for Black innovation or innovation, period, because we've always had to solve problems out of necessity. And so helping connect founders to millions of dollars that they need in order to grow their businesses, helping, young people learn how to code, thousands of young people learn how to code in South Florida and then around the nation has been the work that we've done because it's been necessary. And when we talk about us being in this space and listening to those numbers of how awful they are, right? But I think if we don't tell the full breadth story of those numbers are nowhere near where we want them to be, but we still exist in that space. We've always existed in the space, and we will continue to exist in the space. And telling those stories in the way that you guys have been full breath in ways that our community is not respected in that industry. And I think that is the basis of all of this.
It's interesting. You said, that um, centers of innovation or wherever we may be, rather than assuming that, oh, I have to be in Silicon Valley. If I'm not living in Silicon Valley, then I'm not really in the tech innovation space. And that's important for young people, young Black people to understand, especially young Black women understand that they can be innovators wherever they may be, right? You don't have to physically pick up and move out to Silicon Valley to be able to raise money and do those things. There are opportunities, there are resources that are available to you. Speak a little bit to the importance of young people embracing, not just young people, frankly, everybody, embracing technology, because without the embracing it, it changes fundamentally your ability to compete in business or even for a job, for the most basic of jobs. Talk a little bit about what some of the work that you're trying to do there to get people to embrace the need to utilize technology, if they're not even going to be an entrepreneur, but just to utilize technology in their own life.
Yeah, I mean, Butch, we're all using technology, whether we feel like we're techies or not, right? And you're either going to consume it or it's going to consume you if you're not careful. But everything that we do, and I think more than anything, when we talk about silver linings coming out of the pandemic, those were some of the lessons that we learned, right? We weren't as far along in the access as we thought we were from an educational standpoint until the pandemic hit, and we realized most of our homes did not have the infrastructure or the computers in order for our kids to get online. But then we also saw connectivity of our parents and our grandparents being able to choose providers that look like them through telehealth, right? And so we're using it and we continue to use it. It's the monetization, right? It's the access, it's the respectable amount of funding to grow is a big part of that. And then when you talk about, at one point, if you did not go to Silicon Valley, could you even say you were in tech? Could you play like the big boys? And the pandemic also changed that, right? You're seeing massive, just ecosystems from a technology standpoint, from a workforce standpoint, being created in cities that were oftentimes dismissed or never considered being a tech community. Miami is one of those, right? And we saw literally what has happened and exploded in the past 2 years, but that's been a 10-year concentrated effort. You look at Nashville, of course, Atlanta, DC. You also marry that with we have Black pockets of wealth throughout the United States that you're also starting to see technology infrastructure and companies go there. And then you look at Tulsa, where it has remote programs that are bringing people back to the Greenwood area. And so you're seeing concentrated efforts, you're seeing dollars, you're seeing resources, you're seeing companies move across the United States in ways that they had not been before, that is also putting a lot of respect on our communities in ways that we haven't seen before. So it's up to us to take advantage of that. It's up to us to not be inundated, right, or intimidated by technology. It is definitely a tool. You think of the largest transfer of Black wealth happened in 2008, right? That's when our parents lost their homes, our great-parents, our great-grandparents lost their homes. Up until that point, they were told that real estate was the only way that you could gather wealth, retain it, and then be able to transfer it over. And so in 2008, when they lost their homes, that was the largest transfer of Black wealth. I don't know an other industry, and I always tell people to debate me on this, that is moving fast enough, creating more wealth millionaires, creating more high wage job opportunities than the technology industry, that allows us to move fast enough in order to combat what we have lost, right? Wealth absolutely has a need for speed. So does opportunity, and also does access. And if we're looking from a geography standpoint and an opportunity standpoint, it is definitely our opportunity, especially as women, to take hold of this big moment that we're in right now.
Felecia, share with us a little bit about your you have a fascinating career and moving into working in the nonprofit area, and the opportunity that you have now as the CEO of Black Ambition. How did that opportunity come about, and what is your, because I'd love for you to spend some time talking about Black Ambition. What you guys are doing is terrific. But tell us how you got to that point, how you got into to Black Ambition and going into the nonprofit area? And then what are the opportunities that you see coming out of this in your new position?
Yeah, I kind of laugh because I probably consider myself like a reluctant nonprofit professional. I can't exactly tell you how I ended up in nonprofit because I'd been in for-profit for so long, other than passion. And then, I'm an Echo and Green fellow, and oftentimes in Echo and Green, we talk about this moment of obligation, right? Where you see a problem much bigger than yourself, and you have to ask yourself, if not me, then whom? And if you have all the resources or resources within an arm's reach to solve that problem and you don't do anything about it, like, are you okay at the end of the day with nothing changing when you can do something about it? And that becomes, and for us, that was the moment of obligation. So that's how I ended up, the easiest way to explain how I ended up in nonprofit. But, when we talk about Black Ambition, I've been doing this work of building Black tech ecosystems, expanding Black Tech Week into 8 cities across the United States, and then having a very unique perspective of what it takes in our communities to attract the resources. The opportunity for Black Ambition really started with a conversation with his chief of staff, and one of the directors at the Lennar Foundation. Literally just a conversation about launching a program that turned into, do you want to come run this thing, since you're telling us how we should run this thing? And that began like a kind of a 4-month process of really some hard decisions of leaving my baby, right? Something I co-founded with my husband, over the course of 8 years, and our other partner, Starks. And so it wasn't an easy decision, but to go from being an entrepreneur for 12 years to working for someone, Pharrell would be that person that helped me make that decision, right? And I think when you think about him as just being a big dreamer and launching Black Ambition and what it means and how transformational it's trying to be, like, it was everything that I wanted to do in the next stage of my career, is support Black and Latinx entrepreneurs and fund them at the highest level, and then surround them with all the resources that they could possibly need. I remember my first conversation with Pharrell about coming on board for Black Ambition, just talking about building the team and what the vision was. It like really reminded me of, I don't know if you've seen Lovecraft Country, Butch on HBO, Jordan Peele's show that came out at the height of the pandemic. And there were 2 characters that were in a scene, Christina and Ruby. And Christina is this white woman who has all these mystical powers in the show. Ruby is a Black woman that feels quite powerless. And Christina turns to Ruby and she asks her this question: who are you uninterrupted? And I had never been asked that question in my life throughout my professional career. And I've worked for some of the top tech companies in the world. No one had asked me that. And I could not answer that question myself in that moment. And so for me, Black Ambition literally means building ecosystems, pipelines, access, and wealth that is uninterrupted moving forward. And it's big and bold and weighty, but we know all the things that have interrupted the Black community in the past, right? Racism, redlining, bias in funding. Like we can keep going on and everything that has interrupted us. But what does it look like in tech and in the Black community for us to have a pathway that is uninterrupted by all of that moving forward? Like, that is the dream that I want all of us to hold on to. And I think when we specifically think about Black women in tech, we are so powerful, right? In numbers, we're powerful in the positions that the women that are here gathered today hold. And if we can actually hold, I'm trying not to sound like a Baptist preacher, but like, if we can hold on to that, we start looking at how we can wield power, right? How we can organize and mobilize so that tech is truly transformational for our community. And the women that are in these companies and in these C-suites know that we have their back, so that they can have the power to erect like real change in our community from a wealth standpoint, right? Like, we know that money screams and wealth whispers, and we need more wealth to be louder about how we access it. And it starts with women, and it definitely starts with Black women in the tech industry. And so for us, that's what it means for Black Ambition, right? We invest in technology companies, we invest in healthcare, consumer goods, Web 3.0, and then media and entertainment are the 5 areas in which we invest in. We've invested in 34 companies last year. They've gone on to raise over $60 million at this point, generating over $12 million in revenue. And we're getting ready to invest in another 30 to 35 companies this year, and have been pushing on our partners to do follow-on funding in the same vein.
I love the term uninterrupted, right? Because I think that actually refers to a lot of African Americans' experience in business.
Yeah.
Has been interrupted. A lot of African Americans' experience working in corporate America has been interrupted, or it's not been authentic. As you know, you can come up with whatever adjective we would like to look at, but you know, an opportunity for African Americans to truly be free and uninterrupted towards following their goals and ambition is truly unique. You guys, as you said, you invested in 34 different companies last year, and you held a few special competitions as well. And I think your gifts not gifts, but your investments, I don't want to call them a gift. These investments range from $15,000 up to, I think, almost $1 million, if I'm correct on that. Talk about the process of how, because you know the people that are listening to this and Black women are being inspired by this. I want them to understand the specifics. You know, how do I get involved? How do I get in touch with Black Ambition? What is required? What are the things? What's the process towards? Because I suspect you all will continue with your success to raise more and more money from corporations who have talked the game, right, but have not necessarily made the investment. And it's truly unique because you know the space and you know the pretenders and contenders. And so investing money with you, with Black Ambition, allows for us to get more money in the marketplace of the people who are actually doing the work. So talk a little bit about what's that process look like?
Yeah, so we fund and we source founders through a national prize competition every year. And so applications launch in Q1. From there, once we select our semifinalists, they go through a 3-month cohort style mentorship program with us. And so you think of, the founder of BuzzFeed is one of the mentors within the program. We invest in Black, Latinx, and then HBCU startup founders. And so we have 2 prize competitions, an HBCU one, and then an early stage prize competition. And then companies are early stage, right? So they cannot have raised more than $1 million in dilutive funding in order to qualify. They definitely have to, identify as Black or Latinx to also qualify. And then their business model has to fit within one of the 5 funding verticals for our prize, right? And check sizes this year range from $25K to $1 million. Our first year, it was $15K to $1 million. And then we also do regional prizes throughout the year. And so we've done Inglewood, we've done DC. We just recently did a Martha's Vineyard prize competition for some Black businesses that are there. We'll be in Virginia later this year as well. And so we do regional prize competitions to work with founders that are earlier stage. And oftentimes we partner with organizations like Black Girl Ventures in order to do like their pull up and pitch event that also funds entrepreneurs. And so if you listen to or talk to Justin Turk, who is our $1 million prize winner, he'll tell you that he would have paid for the program. And like every time he says that, I was like, I will happily take your $1 million back. Right. But he just closed a $6 million seed round. And that's a testament to like funding Black entrepreneurs and ideas at a high level, giving them the mentorship and support that they need. And then for a lot of programs, kind of getting out of their way, right? Like do not inundate them with more things that are unnecessary. I would say one thing, aside from the funding and the mentorship and the training and the access, right? Tapping into Pharrell's network to support our entrepreneurs at a really high level. Something that we added that I really think is hard for any corporation to not have in consideration and anyone building and running an entrepreneurship training program is we added self-care and therapy and therapists as a part of our training program. And I don't know how you support Black entrepreneurs moving forward, especially if you believe in their innovation potential, if you are also not thinking about their mental fortitude coming through one of the hardest times financially in our generation. And with all the programs, all the financial commitments that were given, will those entrepreneurs try again? You think of like 2020, at the height of that, for everything that an entrepreneur says, like, I'm going to bet the house, like pushing past all the worst case scenarios to start a business, only for all the worst case scenarios to start a business. We want to make sure that our entrepreneurs are actually whole. And so that's one big reason why we added that as well, just to approach it from a more holistic standpoint. But I think above anything, you hit on a really important point, Butch, is these corporations have made a lot of commitment. And you look at, newsletters like The Plug that have said, I think less than 20% of that money has actually been allocated. And one thing is, like, we need more corporations to actually trust that Black people know what to do with the money, because they do, right? And they know how to build their businesses. And so deploy the capital. Like, what is the problem, right? And I think more of us applying pressure to them and accountability of, like, you've made these commitments. You happily take our dollars from a consumer standpoint, but where are the funding and the opportunities to really be able to compete on a global level? Because that is required for success of our businesses.
Yeah, I mean, Felecia, one of the things that you probably heard me say now that, and you and I sit on a council together, but I look at my job. People ask me, I'm Chief Accountability Officer to corporate America. And that is trying to hold corporate America accountable to the pledges and the promises of what happened in 2020. And Black folks need to be trusted that we know what to do with the money, right? The challenge I see oftentimes when I hate the word that they've made a gift, right? Because that almost makes it seem like, I don't really think what you're going to do is going to be successful. So I'm just going to give you this money and hopefully you can make some sense. And if it does, great. But if it doesn't, I don't really believe in it. And so even whether it's in the nonprofit world or it's in the for-profit world, I think that everything should be called an investment, because I'm investing in you personally. I'm investing in your business. I believe in you. It's all those other things. One of the things that's interesting about what you're doing with Black Ambition is not just the people that you're funding, because you can't fund everyone at the same time, but you're supporting, and supporting, I mean, assisting, I think, 250 entrepreneurs with other types of support, not just as financial support, because not everyone's necessarily at a point or a position to actually accept funding, right? Some of these things are in the ideas or in the germ of these ideas that are not there. But without getting into naming the company per se, right? That we're on this. One of the things, because and I don't want to pick on them versus anybody else, that is a challenge that I have is getting corporate America to actually live up to the pledge. Right? It's literally chump change at the end of the day that they're committing to it. But even with what they're committing to it, it's like the entrepreneurs need, these Black women entrepreneurs need you to believe in them enough to give them the money so that they can move on so that they don't have those other challenges, because your life interrupts your ability to be able to concentrate on these other things. Yeah. You use the word uninterrupted, but it's not just uninterrupted because of racism, other things. It's just life in general gets in the way. And if you could actually remove all the obstacles, snowplow it out of the way, and allow for you to actually put the time and effort and prosper in it, then we will see something different. Yeah. Talk a little bit about the other support that you give to, because yes, you love to fund everybody that comes to you, but realism, you can't fund everybody all at the same time, but you certainly can provide them support. And that's some of the things that you've done. Talk a little bit about that support and what that does for these entrepreneurs. Yeah, it does a lot, right? And when you think from a foundational standpoint, just believing and giving validation to Black ideas is oftentimes
like the rocket fuel that some of our entrepreneurs need. And I'm not trying to simplify it, but sometimes it's just like, I'm not crazy, right? Or the technology professional in their career of just like, finding the right mentor, finding the right champion, working towards a clear pathway to the C-suite, right? Like helping them understand how they become vested in stocks. Like sometimes it's just giving them the validation, like you've done a really good job. Now this is how we add rocket fuel to it. And so when I talk specifically about Black ambition, some of the things that we do is not just on investing in those companies, but helping them find follow-on investing. We do something called like kind of glide path introductions, right? To 500 startups and to Silicon Valley Bank and to SoftBank and some of the angel funds, like helping them get the warm introduction that sometimes they just don't know how to get because we've been told to just keep our heads down and work really hard and not fully understand the way that rooms and circles and tables work, and that some people work really hard to make sure that we never have access to those things. And when you get your foot in the door, really shove the door open to make sure that it's available for others. And so a lot of it's that. A lot of it, because we invest in CPG companies, is actually helping them get introductions to retail partners to get their products on shelves or onto their e-commerce platforms. And we have, one of our companies is getting ready to roll out into all the Marriott locations across the United States. Another one is rolling out into 350 Target locations. And so it's a lot of that kind of work that we also do just to create the opportunities. It's one thing to make sure that they get the capital, but it's all at the end of the day, if they can be good old customer funded, that's brilliant as well. And so working with supplier diversity initiatives and teams to help the pathway for our entrepreneurs is a lot of the work that we do throughout the rest of the year. And then it's mentorship, like I mentioned before, at a really high level, and not mentors that just tell you fix this or do that, but like mentors that trust Black and brown entrepreneurs enough that they are going to leverage their relationships and pick up the phone. And I can tell, and why that's important is I can tell you how many times I've been in meetings and that has been my only ask. And it's like, well, what else can I do? Like, no, I need you to pick up the phone and call 5 of the friends that you would call if you were building a company and raising money, and call them and make introductions to for my entrepreneurs. That is the direct thing that I need. And it's a true testament is if they actually believe in like the words that they're saying, like I want to see action behind that. And the easiest thing that you can do is pick up the phone and make a direct connection. And sometimes the hardest thing that they can do, because they don't truly believe in what they're saying or believe in the innovation potential of Black and brown entrepreneurs, oftentimes I don't see that happen. It becomes everything else, right? And that's some of the messy middle of that, but it's also the push that more of us need to do is like knowing what to ask for, right? The quality of our questions determine the quality of our life. And so asking the questions that truly move us forward and give us the access that people constantly are making sure that we're pushed out on and not have access to.
African Americans have always been early adapters to technology.
Yeah.
And I would point out that, social media is disproportionately, I'm not going to say funded, but is fueled by African American and African American women in particular. Beyond the obvious, why don't you think there has been the acceptance of this market is so disproportionately important to driving social media that it would logically make sense? Well, this group must know a whole lot about it. Why don't we put money behind this group and let them grow with it? Because these are the folks who are the early adapter. These are the folks who are really fueling this entire industry. And it's almost a loaded question, but would love to get your perspective, because I'm sure you've engaged in these frustrating conversations where you're looking at the very people who are benefiting, the companies who are literally benefiting by what African American or Black women or Latinx women are doing, yet they're not investing in their very customer base who's fueled their own growth.
Yeah. That is a loaded question. So I don't like to talk in absolutes because we are seeing checks, right? Are they at the respectable amount of funding to our counterparts? Absolutely not. And there's really kind of two sides to that, right? And so I think one part of that is like us not even about knowing your worth. It's like knowing your value, right? I hate to say know your worth. I think there's only one person, one higher power to whoever you pray to that can actually put a dollar amount on your worth. But your value that you bring to the marketplace, like more of us have to start saying no. And it's hard, right? Because we're accustomed to accepting a little because we think something is better than nothing. And collectively, if we start saying like, no, like your ceiling for us is the basement bottom level. And collectively, we're going to start. We talk oftentimes in Black Ambition about sharing the codes. Like, and even in the nonprofit space, like when we were doing ecosystem building work with Center for Black Innovation, like I had a group of friends that we would all be putting proposals into the same foundations. And what we started to do was share, this is what we heard in meetings, right? This is what they offered us for this program. Oh, they offered you more? Okay, well, I'm not going to come into that meeting asking for anything less than that. And so for us to start pushing against these corporations, especially because we're creating the content, we're creating the coolness, they then monetize on it for millions and billions, and we're left still not even getting a playground made in our neighborhood. Like that's a big problem, right? And so but I would say some of that is on us to form our circles and our teams that share the information willingly so that we can collectively hold them accountable to not like lowballing us, right? And then from another standpoint, why I try to not entertain the conversation of, entrepreneur versus like tech professional or corporate professional, because we need our corporate professionals to also share the codes with us, right? We need them to get us into those meetings and have very transparent conversations. And so like our collective bargaining power around all of this can be shifted as well. But then again, I think one of the biggest tools that we do have is our voice. We've seen that time and time again, right? I think we oftentimes laugh at and dismiss the power of Black Twitter and the power of Black media on how to hold these companies accountable so that they are more transparent and so that they create more access and so that they create more opportunities and the money flows in the way that it should flow for the origin and the intellectual property and the equity that we have in this community. And so there's a storytelling component to this that needs to be amplified and respected. And there's a voice that we've seen it time and time again, that could be mobilized specifically to raise awareness. And we've seen some of that, right? I cannot remember the guy's name from TikTok, has the highest views on TikTok, but is getting a fraction of the dollars. But I think that on the other side of that is there are a lot of other platforms that we can be using, right? Fanbase is one of those platforms. One of the companies that we invested in, Trend, is a micro influencer platform. Like we can also take our energy, our content, our intellectual property to our own platforms and see what can happen in that instance as well. And so we do have some options, not just the mainstream options. We have our own options that we can collectively support and amplify and invest in, and then also reap the rewards from as well.
Well, Felecia, this has been an extraordinarily productive and illuminating conversation. And I could, we could talk and go on and on and on about this, and would love to have you to come back and in one of our follow-up events. But I want to ask you one last question, kind of to put this into context, because I think it's important with the work that you do and the investments that you make. But one of the things that's always troubled me is our Black-owned companies not coming together to work to make 1 and 1 equal 4, right? Yeah. And having to have 100 micro companies, some of which doing the same exact things, rather than saying, you know what, let me come together and work with Mary and Bob and Steve and whoever, right? And bring our Black companies together and to get to scale faster. Because at the end of the day, the real challenge is that corporate America wants to do business with less people, not more. Right. And they want to do business with people, with businesses of scale. And so it would seem to me that tech is the one place that we should be able to get, newer, younger entrepreneurs to say, okay, I don't need to walk around saying I own 100% of anything, right? Because that's not the roadmap. The roadmap's not 100% of zero is zero. Okay. Mm-hmm. So what have you seen in this, and provide some, if you will, closing words or inspiration to these Black entrepreneurs in terms of the importance of trying to find a way to work together to get to businesses of scale that are Black owned. Doesn't mean you own 100% of it, but that are Black owned, that can help to change our community, because we'll be the ones to hire ourselves. We'll be the ones to do business with other Black owned businesses. How do we get there? How can we do that in the space that you are occupying and you see right now?
Yeah, three quick action items around that, right? And so I would say the first one is around those that train and support entrepreneurs. I think we have enough programs that help people start businesses and not enough programs that help them collectively come together for shared ideas, right? So that we can actually have vertically integrated communities and ideas and then be able to go after corporations. So I would implore programs, corporations to think in that instance, right? Of like, how do we build programs that do that? Co-founders, I think, is a phenomenal program that doesn't train someone to start a company. They train them to be a strong number two, which is also very needed, right? And so there's one part with a program. The other part is also just the way that we think about opportunities. We oftentimes think that opportunities are very limited, right? And that if we share something with someone, we don't get anything back. And I always reference this conversation that I had with my mentor. I was having this conversation with him. I was like, I'm a big pie, the pie is big enough for everyone to get a slice. And I truly believe that abundance mindset, everything. And he turned to me and he said, Felecia, no, the pie is not big enough for all of us to get a slice. Because once you eat your slice of the pie, there's nothing left for anyone else. And he's like, do not strive to eat your slice of the pie or say the slice, the pie is big enough for everyone to get a slice. He said, you should be striving, and we should be striving as a community to eat from the garden. Because your consumption at the end of the core of the apple or whatever the fruit has seeds in it. And so you can eat and be well fed with your business. And when you plant those seeds, you produce more fruit. And so if we look at our community as we get opportunities, we can be well fed. We can also then consume, and our consumption replenishes more opportunities for others. I think if we look at everything like that, especially corporate opportunities, then we can actually start building things collectively to be a force of nature. And technology absolutely drives that in ways that it had not done for our parents and our great grandparents. And more than anything, we are in business. And so it's about return on investment, but it's absolutely also about return on sacrifice. We owe our ancestors that have come before us to collectively come together, to strengthen, to promote, to accelerate, and then also to fight in new and innovative ways, because we have the tools in which to do so. But that does not happen if we don't come together and we look for abundance to happen for everyone and not just ourselves.
Well, Felecia, thank you very much for spending time with me today in this Conversations That Count. More importantly, for pouring in to all of us pearls of wisdom and what we can do. I wish you the best of luck with Black Ambition going forward. I would implore upon corporations who are listening to this, who will be a part of this, to lean into Felecia, lean into Black Ambition, and help her to help the thousands of Black women entrepreneurs who deserve this same opportunity as we provide in the overall general marketplace. So, Felecia, thank you. Appreciate your pearls of wisdom and look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you all for the work that you do.
Thank you.